Hello, ladies and folks, and welcome to the Sorting Hat Podcast, where everything and anything can and will be sorted into the various houses of Hogwarts. I am your host, Michael Barryte, joined by my co-host, Katie Reed.
Hey, folks.
And we are joined today by my longtime friend, Zan Alda, and we are going to be sorting a realm of which both of us have fallen deep into, Zan deeper than I, and it is board games. And
I was like, please don't be meth. Don't be some sort of drug.
Right.
Oh, God, this is like a reverse intervention.
No.
Okay.
It's board games. And when we say board games, we are not talking your Monopoly, your Risk, your Clue. We're
not playing Battleship.
Nah.
We're not playing Connect 4.
Nah.
We're not playing Candyland.
No, certainly not. We're talking about advanced, this is 3 to 4 hour endeavor in some cases board game.
Yeah, like any of the ones that I played where it's like you want to play with your friends because they're excited about it, but they're like, all right, here's the setup, and it takes 45 minutes to explain how to get started.
At least.
Yeah.
At least. And this is Zan. I didn't say hi when he introduced me.
Yeah, very sorry.
Hi, everyone.
Zan, what sort of kicked off the board game thing? Because I was very blindsided when you were like, hey, I'm really into board games now. I was like, oh, this is great, because I've also fallen into that realm.
It was sort of that God-shaped hole that I needed to fill. I didn't realize it was there. I thought that it was the internet that was slowly taking me away from movies. Where I remember there, Warm Bodies, that's a movie that exists. And I got through that at home. I was watching at home by myself, and I don't think I picked up my phone once. And it was the proudest moment of my life that I'm like, wow, I was able to do this. But just movies in general can't hold my attention the way they used to.
It's a struggle for us all, I think.
It's getting there. And I guess a lot of it is the technology, but also
we live in an environment that's constantly did you hear what just happened?
Yeah, lots of pings and notifications.
And then with video games, which have also been a constant in my life, they've slowly become a very solitary thing. I don't like going online much because you end up playing with strangers and who are way better than you.
Yeah, they're better than you, and then sometimes super hostile because it's the learning curve. You either got to just be able to hit the ground running, or
right.
Some things about your mother are going to be said.
Yeah. And so it started sort of with a friend of a friend that had invited us over for games. And so I went and I was like, oh, it's kind of fun. Yeah, I like that. Oh, it's also kind of cool. I like that.
Yeah.
And then I think it was when our good friend Michael Sullivan came by with Secret Hitler.
Oh, yes.
Which if you haven't played...
I haven't played Secret Hitler.
Oh,
let's sort that one first.
Well, all right. Continue though with the story.
Yeah,
we will sort
sure.
Secret Hitler though.
And it came in this fancy wooden box that apparently was just Kickstarter exclusive. And I've of course heard of Kickstarter, but I had never actually gone on it.
Crowdfunding has revolutionized the way that board games, card games, any of these sort of things can be made. Because before that, if you wanted to self-publish your games, you were either getting a European house to help you develop it or something, like some German company, or you would end up printing it out from BoardGameGeek.com.
Yeah. Or
I remember Cards Against Humanity even, which was one of the first big crowdfunded sort of internet darlings of the board game.
They still allow you to print out your own cards. They're very open and forgiving about that sort of stuff.
But I was poor and in college when my friends got into them, so we had a lot of Xerox games.
And they also do so many fantastic charity things and just weird bits. Their holiday haul this year was such a fun, weird thing. Anyway,
and so Secret Hitler was the first it was the turning point for you.
Well, Secret Hitler is when I realized, because then I was like, oh, I want this game for myself. And of course, you couldn't find it yet. Because it had only been delivered to its backers.
Right.
And they're like, it might not come out till next year. And even then, it's not going to come with this fancy wooden box.
Right.
And it turned out it was only $37 for the whole thing with this fancy wooden box. I'm like, I missed out on it. And I'm like, I never want to miss out again. So I instantly started going on a Kickstarter, just looking at these tabletop games and reading about them. And obviously, you don't want to throw down money on who knows what.
Right.
There's so many games. How do you know what's going to be the next Secret Hitler? So I'd go through and I would learn these games before I would back them. And slowly it became an addiction of, I got to check every few days because what if something new pops up and I miss it and then it's gone?
I'm not going to lie. I've shown up at Zan's place multiple times for him to just be like, and I just got this new game. It's great. And I'm like, oh my God, this is like, I feel like the past 3 or 4 times you've had like a new game for us to play, and they're all great.
How many are in your collection now?
Honestly, like as far as like real games, I'm maybe a dozen on it.
Yeah.
Because these are all big box games. These aren't like your $15 games. These are like $50. Sometimes
No, that like
it's
anyone
$75.
who is not involved in this does not realize that like it's usually like at least like the starting point on these sort of games is like $40. And
Yeah,
and some
that's
of
your
them,
low end.
And that's like if you're not involved in like getting expansion packs. I think Battlestar Galactica has like 2 or 3 expansion packs that are like also this. I think the same price as the main board game.
Yeah, for me, it was definitely a situation. For the longest time, I'd played everything but Settlers of Catan, and that was like a game that everybody was like, you haven't played that? You haven't played that?
No,
And
it had its time in the sun for sure.
I finally have gotten around to play that one, and also Ticket to Ride, which are like of a similar sort of ilk.
For sure. We should sort one or both of those, yeah.
But let's start with
Well, what I was going to
Xandro.
finish up with my intro was
All
that
right, sorry.
and so finally there was a thing where it was an excuse to get my friends around the table.
Yeah.
Me and Michael go so way back, and we live less than a mile apart from each other. And I would only see him like once every few months, and it would be because once somebody's doing a show or it's somebody's birthday or something. And this gave me an excuse to hit up Michael like every week, if not like 3 times a week, if not every day. So that was cool. And then also you didn't really need to practice a whole lot to go at it. I mean, yeah, maybe your first playthrough of a game, you're still learning the things, but once you have that one playthrough, it's like, I think I could do this now. And the same cannot be said for Counter-Strike, on the computer.
And like what you're saying before about like films have a hard time to hold your attention. Video games can feel isolating. I feel like board games like have that sort of like sense of human connection just by the very like merit of like, unless you can like manage to like do like a weird like over the internet thing.
Right.
It's just something that like makes you like have face-to-face discussions, but they're not about anything that potentially like uncomfortable or like stressful in your life. You're just isolating yourselves to this one scenario that you want to get through.
Right. And usually the best types of games have really exceptional theming attached to them.
Right.
Which will lead us straight into the first one that you wanted us to discuss, Secret Hitler.
Yeah.
Which is a deception-based game. We're going to be dealing with a lot of different types of board games. This is a deception-based game, much akin to if you've ever played Mafia or Werewolf.
Yeah. Battlestar Galactica is also a deception
This is a
game.
situation where there are 2 sides, and Zan, you can certainly jump in. There are 2 sides. There are the liberals and the fascists. You are set in pre-World War II Germany.
Hell yeah.
And you are the, oh my goodness, I'm blank, Parliament. And the whole objective of the fascist side is to either pass 6 fascist policies or have Secret Hitler elected chancellor after a certain point in the game, have him be elected. In the case of the liberals, you are either trying to pass 5 liberal policies or kill Secret Hitler.
Oh, wow.
And the big thing that it sounds so overwhelming until you find out that like a policy, it's just a little token that's either red for fascist or blue for liberal. So it's not like, oh, there's all this reading. It's like, it's just
okay. So you don't have to understand like 1930s
No.
German law policy.
Now the way it'll go is you'll have each turn you'll have one of the players be the president, and they will pick their chancellor, sort of their vice president person, and the whole table will vote on if they trust these 2 people to put a blue card out, a blue policy.
Wow.
And if they get the majority of yes, then the president will take 3 of those tiles and then they will discard one of them and give the other two to their vice president, their chancellor, and the chancellor will get rid of another one, and then they will reveal that tile. And you hope that it's blue.
Oh.
However, it immediately presents the situation where the president, who has no necessary oversight of nobody knows what 3 cards they picked, if they're a liberal, it would behoove them to discard a red card. However, if they're a fascist and they see a blue card, they can choose to discard it and then hand the 2 red cards that remain to the chancellor and say, there were 3 red cards. I drew 3 red cards.
Oh, I see.
However, in the case of the chancellor, the president knows what the chancellor is receiving. So unless a fascist is handing off to another fascist, it's much harder to like get rid of 2 blue cards.
Right, gotcha.
And there's similar games to this, like also Avalon.
Yes.
Or the Resistance, and then the Resistance Avalon, which is another one, which is a similar thing of everybody voting on a small group of people to make a decision about whether something goes well or not. But in that one, the small group of people, if everybody just like quietly decides if it succeeds or if it fails, and if anybody says it fails, then it fails. But the thing is that
what?
They each get a vote, which means if it fails, you are guaranteed that someone bad is there. With Secret Hitler, though, it is great because if something bad turns up, you can hide behind I had no choice.
Right.
Which is like a lot closer to real politics.
Oh man, I don't want to get too much into it, but I mean, almost every day Donald Trump is doing something and I'm like, shit, he just won Secret Hitler. You know, where it's like he got enough power where he can now get away with this.
It is also worth noting this is from the Cards Against Humanity folks, and they did release a secret Trump card as like an option that you could play with.
That's great.
The art style to this game is absolutely phenomenal.
No, I've heard the design is like
those who are fascists are like snakes. It's really cool, or reptilian. And it's also worth noting the way that it's constructed is there are boards made for 5 to 6 people, 7 to 8 people, or 9 to 10 people.
Oh, okay, so it changes how the gameplay dynamic would work
fairly drastically because with each fascist policy that is enacted, as is true with actual fascist governments, the president is granted powers. So in some cases, it will allow the president to look at another player's card to see what their party affiliation is. So they can find out if somebody's a fascist, but they won't necessarily see if they're Secret Hitler or not.
Yeah.
Which, of course, the moment that anybody says, like, that person's a fascist, that fascist will be like, I'm not, I'm a liberal. That must mean you're a fascist. And it's a distrust game and deception game.
I love games that, like, instill, like, a reason to not like your best friend for, like, an hour.
I enjoy this game a lot because I'm pretty good at the deception component.
He's pretty good at lying. I'm pretty lousy at it.
I always feel bad when I convince you that I'm not a fascist.
Oh, no.
And Michael always is the fascist somehow.
It's very weird. I've wound up being Secret Hitler like multiple games in a row.
And he's so Jewish.
The chance of the draw is like so unlikely. It's also worth noting that in some contexts of the game that Secret Hitler does not actually know who the other fascists are, but the fascists know who Secret Hitler is, which adds another level of complexity. As Secret Hitler, it always, like, the strategy is you should really play like a liberal because you're trying to get everybody to trust you. So once 3 fascist cards are enacted, that's when, if Hitler is nominated chancellor and everybody approves
the way that
win.
real fascist governments and regimes get momentum is they tell the people that they are being held back and they need to be liberated by this new order. So that totally makes sense.
I feel like this one is a Slytherin. I feel like as a deception game, it's a Slytherin.
Yeah,
very
any games where you want, like,
manipulative.
where you could potentially have real fights happen. Like I had another game that's very similar is Battlestar Galactica, as I said before, and I've actually seen a man punch a wall because of it.
Like, some of the stuff that you can pull off, though, in this game is so very fun. Like, you can have a fascist check the envelope of Secret Hitler, only to be like, oh no, they're clean. And then they can have their envelope checked by another fascist and be told that they're clean. So it's like a stacked scenario.
Oh my God. I want to play this. I haven't played it yet.
It gets super dicey. And yeah, you run the risk of losing friends for like a night. But it's such great fun.
Slytherin.
Zan, what's next?
Oh man, where to go from there? I mean, what's great about Secret Hitler is that it is made by the Cards Against Humanity guys, which means it's made to be extremely accessible and for large amounts of people.
Yeah.
And
this is
gateway
also
drug.
one that is probably closer to 30 minutes or so for gameplay, right? 30 to an hour?
yeah, I mean, if you're playing with the right people and with the right amount of deliberation, it's probably closer to an hour.
It's
Right.
probably
Into
less
it.
casual than a party game, but it's less intensive than like deep strategy games.
Yeah, this is a step above like code names, for example.
Yeah, I
which is
imagine like the brunt of like any holdups are gonna be people just drawing out drama.
Oh, I mean, we'll definitely get into discussions being like, there are 6 liberal cards in the deck, there are 11 fascist cards. Like, statistically speaking, we've seen this many flipped over this amount of times. So, like, the odds of this happening, or we'll have a situation where it's like, we need to discuss what will happen if you enact a fascist policy. Who are you going to be killing and removing from the game? Like,
Man, Michael should just start a secret Hitler fan cast with you, Zan.
I mean,
what would so moving on, if you were going like, all right, that was my gateway drug, what's the next big one for you that like you're like, I need everyone to play this with me?
Well, I mean, I can tell you what the next one literally was for me.
Yeah.
I'm a huge Game of Thrones fan for the TV show.
Yeah, I've heard really good things about the board game based on it.
And one night when we were playing games or something, someone talked about how long they were playing it or something.
Yeah.
I'm like, I got to look up this game that's really long, that's about intellectual property I really enjoy. So I looked up Game of Thrones, and that's another one that's up to 6 players if you got the current edition, because there's 2 editions. And it's sort of area control, where it's not completely unlike Risk, which is funny because there is a Game of Thrones Risk. But in this, though, it's a little deeper than just, I'll throw all of my guys at all of your guys, and we'll just roll dice for it and hope for it.
No, I've seen it unpacked. There's a lot of stuff that goes to it, right? Like
Yeah,
a big
there's-
old map board and like do you play as characters? I don't remember.
You play as the houses, the individual houses. So you
Yeah.
can be like House Stark and Lannister.
Do you get like any advantages or disadvantages based on which house you're in?
Big advantages. So when you're doing combat, everybody there's no dice, which is really nice.
Oh, that's
which
interesting for a board game of like tabletop sort of stuff like this.
especially with battling.
Yeah. What's the battle system look like?
So the battle system is just whatever units you got versus whatever units they got. And then each of you has 7 house cards. And these house cards, they are characters from the series that are specific to the house. And so if you're House Stark, you have a Ned Stark card or whatever. And that'll give you a little extra boost, like maybe an extra 4 points. You're not playing on a big scale of like my 30 points versus your 37 points. It's like I have 4 and you have 6.
right.
Okay,
and
gotcha.
all of the, much like Risk or similar invasion games, like your army has a certain value attached to it. So taking 2 soldiers against 1, I'm blanking on the terms of all the things, but like
Horse.
a
knight.
knight, that's like unevenly matched battle, right? I believe 2 warriors versus a knight. So you're like 2 on 2 because knights are worth 1. And then it really then comes down to the card as you're like trying to gain control of what have you.
Yeah,
is this game is the artwork based on the book series? So like they just got their own artist for it, or is it based on the TV show?
It's the books. So there's a few characters that aren't never mentioned in, like Michael's read the books but not seen the show, and
So
I've
he'd
seen the show but
probably
not read
like
the books.
have like less surprise about everything that's on the board than you were like, what? Who is this?
I mean, we're not really dealing with events, so it's just, hey, it's worth noting the main objective is the game is won by taking 7 fortresses or castles, correct? I feel like we sort of got lost on the battle system.
out of how many are there possible?
Depends on how many you're playing with, because if you're only playing with 3 people, a lot of the board is closed off for the whole game. So I haven't actually done a count on it, but it's definitely, there's not enough to go around. That's why they like force you into some fights. But yeah, you want to have your dudes in 7 different places that have a castle or a stronghold in it. But when you get into a fight, though, the character cards I was talking about, every house has some good ones that are really strong, and they also have some weak ones. And so you kind of need to get in your opponent's head of which card are they going to pick, because you both have to commit to a card before you reveal it. And so it's like, do you want to spend your really powerful one now, or do you want to save it for a later fight? Are they going to go big?
Once they're spent, you can't use it again during the game?
Not until you use all the other cards, unless you have some special recycle magic card or something. But otherwise, the standard rule is once you use it, you don't get it back until you use the other 6 cards. So you got to be a little more selective with that, but not much luck at all. It's more just getting in the head of it. But what really sets it apart, a big component of the series, of Game of Thrones in general, is the plotting, the scheming, the alliances, and the betrayals. Mm-hmm. And that's a big part of this game because, in Risk, the most you could do is just say, don't move your dudes here, or don't attack me and I won't attack you. But in this, when you get into a fight, it is possible to have the help of a third party to do it, where they can lend their help.
So there's a planning phase where you're given tokens that allow you to either march troops, stand in defense, support, muster currency. Is there any other
a raid?
You can raid, which will basically counteract somebody else's attempts at something.
So how do the third parties come into play in this planning stage?
Well, so everybody puts down tokens at the same time face down, which means it's simultaneous action. So you're committing to what you're going to do without knowing what your opponents are going to do. And after everybody puts down all their tokens, you flip them all, and then you see what you're dealing with. And if you have a support token on one of your little areas of land, that means you can add your combat strength to a fight that's happening next door.
In a neighboring area.
And you can give that support to whichever player you want. And so that's when you're like, who's going to give me something good? Who's going to do me some favors?
Gotcha. Okay, so this might even be more Slytherin than Secret Hitler was.
Oh, yeah.
It's all about manipulation and ultimately betraying the other person.
I mean, it's a competitive game, but there's definitely, it's less... I mean, one could argue that maybe it's a Ravenclaw in the fact that
it's one of the longer games.
Well,
too.
it's one of the longer games, but you do have to sort of plot a few points ahead of like, if this person does this, then this. Although I do think a game that we're going to be touching on is more of a Ravenclaw than this.
Yeah. Are you talking about chess? Because Zan told me something really interesting about chess in the board gaming world.
Oh, geez.
Wait, what?
Well, hold on. Wrapping up on Game of Thrones, the last cool thing that's really cool and unique about it is there are these what they call influence tracks.
Oh, yes.
And so there is a hierarchy that's built into the game of somebody that is the most important, and they get to make decisions about tiebreakers and stuff like that.
Oh, is that kind of supposed to be like the king of Westeros or something? Or just like, okay, cool.
Sort of the person that's like keeping the throne warm until a king emerges. And so you will kiss ass to them, where it's like, I want to turn on them, but they currently have the most power.
Right.
So until we can overthrow them, I kind of need to do what they say.
Yeah,
yes,
there's
Slytherin.
that one. There's the battle track, or what is it? Battle?
The fiefdoms.
The fiefdoms one, which means like if there's a situation where there's a tie in a battle, that person wins, or whoever is higher on the fiefdom track will win. And then there's what is the last?
The King's Court.
The King's Court, and that, what does that one do?
That's how many the tokens you can play. Some tokens have a star, which means they're better tokens.
Right.
Oh, God.
And so if you're way high up on that one, you can put down...
If you're feeling like overwhelmed by hearing all this stuff, just remember, this is like how board games
and Katie,
are in this sort
there's
of like...
more, because when you take strongholds, you can get barrels, and the amount of barrels that you have
honestly
limits the amount
this
of
is the one
forces
topic
that
I'm
have.
like, we will
but
get
it gets
lost
even
in
crazier
the
than that, that, Katie, because every turn you have to flip over 3 cards, and those dictate new things. And if certain cards reveal wildlings, the wildling tracker moves up.
I love
And
that
if the
your way of
wildling
rousing
tracker
me is to like ramble on with more like more and more obscure rules.
But it's all actually what happens.
Even when you're trying to roast me, you're a fucking nerd.
Hey man, I'm totally fine with that because this game is dope.
Yeah, I mean,
I love how excited you guys are.
As I describe these games, I'm even trying to keep it sort of general and vague.
And
so.
I'm
Yeah.
trying to get you more into the weeds.
I only even brought it up myself because I was like, damn, this is a lot of stuff to remember. But keep in mind, when you start these games, you usually like play with someone who's played a few times and like you'll get it.
I definitely play, and when Zan is usually explaining a game to me, I go, the first 2 rounds I won't know what the hell is going on, but by the 3rd round I'll have figured it out.
That's
and
a good approach.
And because really a lot of these games sound far more complicated than they are, but you just like, oh, once the cogs start moving, everything naturally sort of
I don't know. I
clicks
played
in.
with some dicks. Have you ever played with a dick who's like in the bad way, like glued to the instruction manual and like is trying to call you out on technical stuff?
Oh, no. I mean, maybe that's me. I usually have the rules with me, but mostly just because
You want to make sure everybody's...
No, like you're
Yeah.
probably just trying to make sure that it's being played the way it's supposed to.
Yeah.
But these are dudes who are trying to do the Machiavellian thing of calling out technical fouls
I
and
mean,
stuff.
Zan, I will say you're not that dude just based on the amount of times that we've been like, oh, I meant to do, and you're like, that's fine. Like, we'll all give it to him, right?
I don't know if it's like sacrilege to the board game community, but like if you're playing a new game and you fuck up, I always just go, we know this for next time, but for this game, it's a house rule.
Yeah, it's usually fine.
Yeah.
Moving into, I'd say, the one which we're probably moving to next, Zan,
Go
right?
ahead.
Chess?
No. What is this? What is this chess bit?
Zan, tell me what you...
the chess
gossip.
bit, like, chess was one of the earlier board games because I did grow up with board games. I think we all did.
Yeah.
But when I was a kid, it was like Monopoly and Sorry, and those weren't very engaging. And that was another thing that I was saying that really kind of pulled me into these new board games was I
Yeah.
didn't realize that there was a next level of board games where you didn't just have to rely on the draw of the card or the roll of the dice.
Or ones that were just like universally like, what do we need? We need something to do. Like these are the board games that everyone like universally knows. Like chess is considered like the thinking man's game.
Yeah, there was just like Monopoly. It's like you roll the die and then you basically just make the decision of like, do I buy this? Do I not?
Yeah.
And then I'm sort of stuck. Like a lot of it is just left to the dice.
But
and
chess is all about strategy, and like
Right.
I always have been like really intimidated by it. But you told me something very interesting.
Which is that apparently, like, because even though this is considered like, I grew up hearing about how this is the greatest game of all time
Yeah.
as far as games go. And I mean, again, I'm new to the board game scene, so I'm really sorry, but sort of my Bible right now is boardgamegeek.com. And
Yeah.
apparently, like, there's a huge movement against chess
What?
that it's really not all that it's cracked up to be.
That's amazing. What are like? Do you know any of the arguments against it?
I don't know if I can tell you specific arguments against it, but from a logical sort of, deductive reasoning standpoint, it is a very old game, and it was invented before there was like a printing press even.
Yeah,
So-
shitty grandpa game.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's just a lot more opportunity now to create things that are a lot more thematic, which apparently I found out thematic games have a nickname called Ameritrash. So I guess that's more of a Western thing.
Whoa.
And there's games that are more that they call like Euro games, Euros, where it's like it's more about dice and just the numbers and mechanics. And I guess theming is something more of a Western thing that we introduced into it.
And
But
they think it's garbage to have thematic elements.
well, apparently there's some people that use that term and it's not even meant in a derogatory way, but I'm like, I'm pretty sure its origins are derogatory.
right.
The word trash is there in American, which for most Europeans is insult in itself. Like if
Right.
you tell if you
So it's a
confuse
little bit
Canadian for an
redundant.
American, they're gonna be like, no, look at my pin.
Although, like, I will have to say that all of these heavily themed games really help add a sense of playfulness to, I mean, and it also comes from like a lot of us when we're playing, we all come from like a bit of a theater background. So we're going to,
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah,
We're
we're some
gonna-
dorks.
we're going to throw ourselves into the characters a little bit. But moving on to the next game, I was going to say Star Wars Rebellion.
Oh, was that the next one?
What,
Okay, so yeah, this. I think this was actually literally next for me. Was I loved my girlfriend. Thank goodness she loves these board games also, and she can get in deep. And it's not like she's just placating me; like she's really into it and very competitive. And we love this.
She is very competitive,
right?
And in both Secret Hitler and Game of Thrones, we're at like one another's throats.
Yeah, she and Michael got some beef.
I might even be like worse than that though, because I'm so non-competitive that sometimes it feels like I don't put any stakes into the moves that I make. Like I'm very much like
you
whatever
and Alex
happens.
Would get along fine.
Oh hell yeah! I want to play like Mario Party with Alex or something.
Yeah, Michael's roommate Alex, he's quite an agent of chaos.
Yes.
And so me and my girlfriend, we loved the Game of Thrones so much, but it needs at least 3 players. And even then, it's supposedly not the best with 3 players. You want like at least 4.
Oh, gotcha.
And there was that one night when we got all 6 players, and that was a magical night.
Yes.
But the thing was that, you know, a lot of evenings, like especially here in LA, everybody's got their own lives. And
it's pretty isolating, folks.
I know, right? It's not just like, oh, I got my 9 to 5, and then in the evenings, whatever. It's like I got my 9 to 5, and then I'm going to rehearsals in the evening, and then I got to go edit a thing, and then work on a draft of my thing.
And even if you like do have friends, if you don't happen to live in the same neighborhood, or even sometimes if you do, like you got to drive like an hour to go see them. So like it's good to have this sort of like anchor. Mm-hmm. But if you don't have it, is this a game that's good for 2 players? Is that what you're getting at?
That's what I was leaning up to. Yeah. So we wanted a game that we could play together that still had the same depth and
this game has depth
and
then some
intellectual stimulation that Game of Thrones had, but something that we could play with 2 players.
Yeah.
And so I went to my Bible of BoardGameGeek.com and I took a look at their top 100 list, and near the top I saw Star Wars Rebellion. And Star Wars Rebellion, it was a newer game. It's about a year old from right now. And not only could you play it with 2 people, but it's pretty much just a 2-player game.
Oh, whoa. Is it co-op or is it competitive?
Oh, no, it's very competitive. You got the Rebellion against the Empire, of course.
Oh, God, that's where she's very competitive comes in.
Yeah. I think most Star Wars games are Empire versus Rebellion, come to think of it. But what was really cool about this one, what stood out about it, was its asymmetrical gameplay. And if you don't know much...
What does that mean?
Yeah, if you're not much in the games, asymmetrical is where the 2 players or all the players, they're working towards different goals. So, I mean, an example, like if you're playing a fighting game, video game like Street Fighter, that's pretty universally known. That's pretty symmetrical. Both of the players start with the same amount of health. Maybe they have some different move sets to them, but they're pretty much doing the same thing. But people will still argue that it's asymmetrical because one player has to play on the right side of the screen, which is sort of a disadvantage because more people are used to playing on the left side of the screen because that's player 1 when you're playing by yourself.
So like, asymmetrical just means that somebody might have the upper hand at the start of the game?
Asymmetrical gameplay would be tag. Like, in the simplest sense, because there's one or hide and go seek. One person is it. Everybody else has one person has the objective of I need to find everybody. The other people have the objective of we don't want to be found.
Has like a more defined sense of power, whereas everyone else is kind of either on their own and like only have the advantage of like there being so many of them, or they have the collaborative like numbers to equal out that power
Kick
balance.
the Can is another asymmetric game where one person is trying to get everybody into the jail of whatever you've designated it as, but one player can free everybody by kicking the can. So there's like a sense of duality in that. And in the case of Star Wars Rebellion, the Empire's main objective is to find the rebel base. And in the case of the Rebellion, it is to work the ticker sort of down. Which can be done by accomplishing various objectives.
Yeah. So
when you work the ticket down, like, is that like destroying the Empire?
Not even, because this is where the theming really comes into the play. And that's what I love about thematic games, is because it's a whole nother level of art, where it's like, not only do you need to create a game that it mechanically plays well, but its rules also need to help tell the story.
I
so
feel like
to
a good
speak.
analog would be video games.
Right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like you have earlier games, which like Mario Brothers had a very, very loose theme to it. But like over time, even that franchise, like a lot of people like became more attached because they knew more about like story, and video games now are often considered art if they mostly have thematic elements and sometimes don't even have as much of the gameplay to it.
Yeah.
So is that what you would describe for like Star Wars? It just has a lot more of like that elevated sense of
Yeah, because I
theme?
mean, who doesn't know Star Wars at least a little bit these days? You got the Galactic Empire, which is the big, over-dominating force, and you have the rebels, the small ragtag group of dudes that are trying to stand up against them. And so, built into that, the Empire far outnumbers the rebels in this game because you still have, unit control space, sort of like Risk, sort of like Game of Thrones. You were just talking about. And it's very intimidating at first glance because there's just so many more little unit pieces for the Empire than there are the rebels. And so the rebels are never meant to be able to go toe-to-toe with the Empire and just destroy them outright. And so their main thing is that they'll have objective cards. And these cards will have little requirements that they have to meet, like destroy 3 units in a battle or something.
Yeah, or be holding 3 or 4 rebel planets or something. Like 4 rebel planets are in your control, or destroy a Star Destroyer, blow up a Death Star.
Have a number of dudes on certain planets.
Right.
Little things like that. And so as you fulfill these, on the side of the board, there's the round tracker, which is numbered from 1 up to 16. And as both players do all their turns, you move the round token up to round 2. Every time, though, the rebels complete an objective, usually they're worth 1 point. Mm-hmm. The rebel token starts up on round 14, and it goes down to 13. And so both the round token's moving upwards, while the rebels' reputation marker is going down.
Oh.
And so what the rebels are effectively doing is shortening the time, how long the game is for the Empire to find their base.
Yeah, by saying like if their reputation is becoming so great, they will eventually be able to like overthrow, in the sense of like more galaxies will come to their aid. So they're trying to
for sure
gain their reputation, and the only thing that the Empire can do to win is destroy the rebel base, which is a hidden thing from them.
Which is great. It's a big, enormous board, 32 different planets or systems as they refer to it.
Have you ever played where somebody just found somebody really quickly?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you want to play the gambit and you want to set up your rebel base because it's wherever the rebel player wants it to be.
Yeah.
So sometimes you try to like play the odds and put it right next to their Death Star because they'll never think to look for it right there.
Yeah.
They'll keep pushing towards the other direction.
Yeah, for sure.
And so, once in a while that'll backfire. But even then, a short game is like 2 hours in that scenario.
Yeah, and it is worth noting, when I first played this game with Zan was the Empire, I was the Rebels.
Right.
I showed up at 7:30 p.m.
Yeah, that's about a good time to start.
Mm-hmm. I left at 4:40 in the morning. That was playing one game.
We had an intermission. We went to go get food at one
had
point.
an intermission that was maybe 45 minutes long.
Holy
like at
crud.
most.
And then explaining the game, that took like an hour. But also Michael and I, we're talkers, we're overthinkers. And so...
No, and most people who play board games, you wouldn't describe them that way at all.
But it is also worth noting, I am pretty proud of myself because Zan found my rebel base on round 3, and I was successful in moving my base. And then proceeded to get until round 8, I believe.
Yeah, you did quite good on that one.
Okay, so that's how you guys played the first time. Do you guys have a preference about which one you guys like to play?
Well, I've only played the Rebels, and I've only played twice. The second time I did successfully beat Zan, so I feel very good about myself.
Yeah. Well, what's cool about again, it's very asymmetrical, where you think that like the Empire has the upper hand because they have the more units and the more pieces.
Sure.
But there are certain things that are better for the Rebels, where the Rebel player, the
Rebels are able to play more missions, which allow them to do certain things, whereas you have to attach So there are more components to talk about in this game. There are all these player tokens. What the hell are they called?
The leaders.
The leaders. So there are leaders that exist in your bases, and each leader has certain icons associated with them which allow them to run certain missions, but you have to attach them to cards to run those missions.
Yeah.
Or you leave them in your leader pool, which allows you to then you place them on whichever system you want to move an army to. In the case of the Empire, they're trying to reach as many planets as they can, get ground troops on them, because if they get ground troops on any system that does have the rebel base, the rebels have to say, you found my rebel base, and that's when they're like effectively sunk. So the Empire wants to, it's beneficial for them to save a handful of leaders so they can just be moving as much as they can, as quickly as they can, which means that they then can't do as many missions. So just the way that it's being played, at least that seems like the most advantageous move.
Yeah, and then there's also like little things like as far as little space fighters go, for the bad guys, a TIE fighter is pretty much the same thing as like an X-Wing for the good guys. But while an X-Wing can move from one planet to another planet by itself because it has a hyperdrive, the TIE fighter, it can't do that. It needs a bigger ship to carry it from one place to another.
Yeah.
So that's actually one thing that like the Empire doesn't have as good as the Rebels.
Right. And that's where we
Okay.
get farther and farther into the weeds, because there's also cards that are in place similar to Game of Thrones when either ground or air battles are taking place. But in this case, there are also die that are being rolled to add an extra layer of confusion. And there are some mission cards that are absolute, like you need to roll a certain amount in order to successfully do certain things, like capture a character and then turn them over to the dark side, like happened the first time I played. Zan managed to capture Princess Leia and turn her to the dark side, so I lost a leader.
Oh,
and
a Princess Leia where Leia goes dark.
And Princess Leia is a pretty solid leader card. So the fact that I lost her, I was very salty about that.
Okay, so based on all of those things that you've told me,
It's
I
a
also would
Ravenclaw.
not to know.
It's a Ravenclaw.
At what point? Because like I'm
At
just
what
always
point are you really fucking nerds?
no, what I want to know is like based on all of that, at what point in the game would someone accidentally kiss their sister?
I think I made the leader tokens do that the other night when we were playing. I was like, oh, and Luke's joining the game, because you get more leaders as the game goes on. And so when Luke jumped into the game, I made them kiss, because that's something that happens.
Yeah, this is a Ravenclaw game for sure.
They describe this game as like a saga in a box, and it really does have this epic feeling, because there's been dozens of Star Wars board games over the years.
And like, you know, it had been a little while and nerds were running out of things to argue about Star Wars about, and this just gave them a giant box full of rules and pieces and gameplay to argue about.
I'm very excited to play again, to be playing my hand at the Empire side, because I have to assume it's a very different game to play.
Yeah.
And Star Wars fans will also appreciate that it's mostly the original trilogy stuff.
Yes.
So not much of the prequels or the
Okay, so
new
like
stuff.
these three games that you've all mentioned like seem like they're like very much in the spirit of what like you know, board gaming is now. What would be like one last really good one, like one that you're really excited about?
Well, I'm gonna turn it a little bit on you,
sure.
Katie, and say we've had a Ravenclaw and we've had 2 Slytherin games. I think I know what a Hufflepuff one would be.
Yeah?
And well, it's any number of like co-op games.
Oh,
I
sure.
feel like co-op games are inherently like Pandemic or even Dead of Winter, although Dead of Winter does run the risk of a betrayal, which would make it a Slytherin.
Slitherpuff.
But with both of those games, that's a situation where the group takes on various roles. In the case of Pandemic, you all are CDC workers, and there's been an outbreak of some virus represented by block tokens, and after each turn, that's a situation where like you move to various areas to try to eradicate the virus. However, with each turn, you have to flip over more cards, and if you get, I think,
I don't
3
like that
tokens,
game. It stresses me out.
Right.
Oh.
However, that game, as Zan and I both agree on, it runs the risk of one person sort of taking on a leadership position. So you more or less can just be like, oh, it's really one person controlling 4 players. So it's a 1-player game. Dead of Winter is a better version of that because it does add a secondary set of objectives to it. And Zan, I will let you take it from
what is
here.
Dead of Winter? I actually don't know anything about this one.
Dead of Winter was another one that I think I found by scrolling. Oh, where did I? Well, the point is that it's at like number 40 on Board Game Geeks overall, which is still really high up there considering the thousands of games that exist.
Oh, yeah. And there's some picky nerds on that website. And God bless them. They're giving us some good games.
Yeah, they did all the hard work for us. And it's a zombie game, zombie survival. And it's cooperative, where you're a group of survivors that are trying to survive a very cold winter. So you have a double entendre there. This is the middle of winter, it's the dead of winter, but the zombies are also the dead.
It would not be a zombie sort of franchise or thing without there being a pun.
Exactly.
It's verboten. Even Shaun of the Dead had 2 different ones in it.
So as Michael was saying that not only though... with a lot of co-op games, you run the risk of the one leader sort of dictating what other people do. Right. But this game, each player has a secret objective that is unique to only them.
Oh, dope.
And so while there's a group objective and that can change, that changes from every game because there's different scenarios at the beginning of the game. So maybe it's just need to survive for 5 rounds, or maybe it's everybody needs to equip a gun or something like that. There's a group objective for everybody, but then everybody has a secret objective card, and you're not allowed to share what your objective is. And maybe it's having like 4 health packs in your hand, or maybe it's
having the most cards of everybody playing the game.
Oh god, and that's sort of the sort of thing that's so hard to do, like secretly.
Right. So it's like not a completely cooperative game as Pandemic is, because there is that possibility. There's also the possibility that one person can be a betrayer, and there's also the possibility that a character can be exiled, and that changes their win conditions.
But I understand the thematic reason for having this, because in most zombie apocalypse sort of scenarios, there's a greater sense of like, we all need to band together, whatever our differences were before this, it's all together now. But then ultimately the real conflict, not from the zombies, comes from people trying to fight the urge of like,
we are the Walking Dead and all that.
Like it comes down to like, am I going to do what's best for me when stuff gets really hard? And so I think that's such a that's such a great mechanic to build into the game, to be like, no, you're ostensibly going to be helping everyone survive this, but really you're in for yourself.
Yeah, it's great because they created a thematic way to translate into gameplay mechanics that cliche of the guy that's holding out on everybody, where he's holding on to the food, and it's like he's not your enemy, but he is holding out on you. And so
if you knew, you could potentially be pissed, especially if it's something like med packs.
Yeah,
like and that was I need one of those, and you're like, I literally couldn't give them away.
Right. Yeah, and that was my first game, was where I needed to have like a fuel, a weapon, and a health. And a weapon, because I was like going to hit the road, so to speak. And so I needed to lie about what I had in my hand. And it's not because I'm working against you guys. It's just, as I always say, I just have to do this. I just have to do this. So
I realized, while we could theoretically give this one a Gryffindor or a Hufflepuff, I think it might actually be a Gryffindor.
Yeah.
For the reason that it's like, it starts as a collective, but it's also like you have to look out for yourself, and you might have to do a few things that are a little bit disruptive.
I've talked about this like briefly. I kind of see the houses as sort of being complementary, in that Hufflepuffs and Ravenclaws are like are analogous to Gryffindor and Slytherin, but there's the absence or the presence of ego. Ravenclaws and Hufflepuffs don't have ego. Gryffindors and Slytherin do. So Slytherins are kind of like Ravenclaws, but with like more self-interest. And so I would say this is a Gryffindor, because you have to ultimately do what's best for yourself.
It starts as a Hufflepuff and it raises to a Gryffindor.
Yeah, and there's some pride involved. Yeah.
You go, but I will say that Hufflepuff is 5-minute dungeon? Is that the one you were thinking?
No, I got to tag on my last thing
okay.
about this game I love so much. So as Michael was saying, somebody might be a betrayer.
Right.
So when you're drawing these secret objectives that you have to keep to yourself, one of the people's main win condition is that the main win condition of everybody else fails.
What?
And so it's like a mole. But what I really like about it is that unlike Secret Hitler or unlike Betrayal, there's not a guarantee that someone is working against you. There's a good chance that everyone's
there's like
on
the
your side.
psychological horror element.
We
That's
definitely
fucking
played with 5 people last
tight.
time, and all of us, we had a situation where we all needed to put in 5 food, I think it was, and all of us claimed that we had food. So we all like put it in, and then we all get to the reveal part and we're like, food. Okay, we're all good.
Oh
Like,
my god! But even that's not a guarantee.
Right,
I love
exactly.
psychological horror elements to like these sort of things. This is the game that like I know the least amount, and I'm the most hyped on. I want to play this.
Well, it's just this great paranoia because any other game, you know that somebody's evil, and here it's like maybe no one's evil, maybe it's just in our head, and that's what usually is going through.
But ultimately, you're also like kind of doing evil things to everyone else, but you're kind of justifying it. It's such a human sort of evil.
Just a quick plug: we're not going to sort it. I mean, it's a Slytherin. It's Betrayal at the House on the Hill, which is
ass game.
It's
so
a goofy ass
fun.
game, kind of Call of Cthulhu-esque.
Very Lovecraft-like. Yeah.
It basically it's a. You build out a dungeon or build out a house, and then at some point you activate a situation where it becomes asymmetric, and one person's the villain, and the rest of you are all working.
Yeah,
against
it's like
them.
if you like if you only had a very truncated version of the role playing game Call of Cthulhu, like where the characters have already been created for you. You just like get into a house and go. It's like there's not like any free form like improvisation to it. It's very fun. I recommend it.
It's very fun. You can take. The stats are affected and it just gets goofy and weird. A Hufflepuff game is 5-minute dungeon.
What is that?
It is
in gameplay and in style.
Yeah. So give the pitch, Zan.
Okay, so 5-minute dungeon. This was one that just got kickstarted. This was my first Kickstarter to actually get delivered to me. So
cool.
You're probably going to be hard pressed to find one online right now, but I do suggest checking out later.
It's really fun.
Cooperative game where everybody's on the same team, no excepts or buts. We're all on the same team, and exactly what it is each round is 5 minutes. You got 5 minutes to get through the dungeon, and there's a little free iPhone app that comes with it, so that way you can keep the countdown going. And there's also a narrator that gives you updates on how much time you have left.
Oh, cool!
And it's straight up a dungeon crawler. So you
that's amazing.
Plays up to 5 people, 2 to 5 people, and each player has a deck of action cards. You pick out your type of player at the beginning, sort of your class. There's a warrior class that's more about the fighting, and then there's a mage that's more about magic and stuff. And so when you pick your cards, that's your little action deck, so to speak. And it very simply, each dungeon is like a round, and it's like a level. And so each dungeon has a boss. I think the retail version is going to come with at least 5 bosses. The Kickstarter one went up to 7, though.
And that 7th one is
you'll never
hard
see
but
those
beatable.
other 2.
You might. I don't know. I mean, really, all you need is just like a PDF image of it, and you're like, okay, I know what the boss is.
Right.
It's that simple. So the way it'll go is that the very first boss, you only have to get through 20 doors, as they call them, to get to the boss. And most of the doors are just enemies. And so as soon as you start the timer, you flip the first door card and you'll see some bad guy. And the bad guy will have on him a few icons. Very simple icons. There's only like 4 or 5 different types of icons. There's a sword, an arrow,
a shield, and a jumping person.
A jumping, and then a scroll.
Yes.
That's it. So yeah, there's 5. Oh yeah, 1 for each player.
And what do those signify?
Fighting with swords. I guess magic is the scroll. Bow and arrow is a ranged
so
attack.
it's basically saying like who's effective against this enemy?
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
sort of.
great.
And each deck favors one of these symbols more than the other, and then also has certain specials within that deck. Yeah.
And so quite simply, it's just say you draw the card, and also it's funny. One of the enemy cards, it just says Dave. And it's just some guy on the beach and he's like drinking something. He's kind of waving, but he's all schlubby. Because then they also have like, what was it? An unreasonably tall ice wall, which is a reference to Game of Thrones and stuff. And so you need to play some of the jump icon cards. But anyway, you get Dave, and Dave has a sword icon on his card and then also a scroll and an arrow. That means between the 5 of you, you need to, in your hand that you're holding of like 4 or 5 cards, you need to put down those 3 cards with those icons on
and then
them.
that means he's vanquished. You shift those cards over, you open the next door, and then you see scroll, shield, and then you're like,
do you have a bunch of cards in your deck, or do you have to replenish them somehow?
Yeah, you're basically, you have a certain amount of cards in your hand. I forget the exact particularities.
Close to 50.
But
okay.
yeah, you're constantly like playing and drawing, and there are some cards that'll cause you to like pause the timer or have to like steal other cards from other people's hands.
But ultimately, are you trying to just go as quickly as possible?
Yes. You have 5 minutes to clear, and
what allows you to pause?
There's one special.
Oh, gotcha.
Once you throw down that card, you just like hit the timer.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, so it's like very much like I need a minute, fellas.
Yeah.
Okay.
And each character has a special ability where if you discard 3 cards from your hand, you can use that special ability, which sometimes is just an instant kill.
Yeah, like it'll take out a monster or an event, and all those cards do different things. Or
oh man, that sounds so fun.
It's super fun. It's really quick because it's 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And like we managed to like rattle through it all pretty quickly, and it was still fun even when we lost. Like you're just like, okay, we can reset, like it's fine. It's only 5 minutes.
And it's so frantic.
Yeah.
And so there's no turn order, and so everybody's like, does anyone have a sword? Oh, there, I got a sword.
Oh god, yeah. And I imagine like it can really much like cause like the feeling of like, oh shit, I shouldn't have played that card yet.
Oh yeah. We definitely threw down, it was like all of us throwing down arrows at the same time. We're like, well, we just lost all of our arrows.
Oh crud. Because it's hard to like communicate while you're.
Yeah, once you exhaust your cards, you've exhausted your cards.
Sucks.
Yeah, they say once you let go of the card, it's been played. So even if both of you put down an arrow, it's like it's gone.
I would suck at this game. You'd be yelling at me all the time,
It's
Michael.
very fun, and like once you get a rhythm, it's pretty straightforward and fun.
And so that's like a prime Hufflepuff sort of game.
Oh yeah, in aesthetic, in terms of just like it's quick, it's fun, like everybody's working together. Just a playful game. I will allow us though one more game because I think it is the favorite game of our group anyway.
Oh, sure.
Right
what is
now,
it?
anyway.
Yeah, and it is Blood Rage.
That sounds terrifying. What the hell is Blood Rage?
Oh no, it's great.
Well, let me tell you first how I landed on this game, because again, I'm always scouring Kickstarter. I want to be there for the next big thing.
Yeah, get that scoop.
And you notice which ones are the big ones when there's already a lot of backers on it, you know? And also you can tell there's a production value that goes into the Kickstarter video that they publish, or even their campaign page, the graphic layout. You're like, oh shit, this is something to be a part of.
Right.
Guys, if I can just give a note to anybody looking to do a Kickstarter, just make your audio be good. If you're in an echoey room, nothing takes the wind out of me clicking
Especially if you're
button.
just a guy sitting in front of a camera. Just make it so that I can like stand listening to you for the 5 minutes or whatever it is for you to explain how this game works.
I hate to say that aesthetics, really, really matter more than a concept, but if you can't put the smallest amount of effort into the video promoting your project that you're presumably passionate about.
If you're trying to get money for it, just like try.
Anyway. Onto Blood Rage.
So yeah, so you got in on this one.
Well, it was a game called Rising Sun.
Yeah.
And everybody was all excited about it. I'm like, why? Why this one? And apparently this guy, the game developer, the creator, he's made a bunch of games, but everybody was particularly stoked on this game called Blood Rage that he did.
Okay.
And so for pledging for Rising Sun, it was like $100. But meanwhile, I looked into Blood Rage, number 17 on Board Game Geek, so that's pretty high. That's a game that already proved itself, and it cost half as much as Rising Sun was going to cost.
That would be a big deciding factor for me.
I decided to do a little research, and so I'm like, I'll get Blood Rage and see how that plays, and that'll be my decision on if I back Rising Sun. Spoiler alert, I backed Rising Sun.
Oh my god. Okay, so what is Blood Rage about?
So this game, it's Vikings. And Vikings have like the sweetest, most awesome apocalypse story in their mythology of Ragnarok, where it's literally just like fire falling from the sky and boulders and everything, and it's just this destruction.
I thought you meant sweet as in cute, and I was like, that doesn't track from what
no.
I've been told about Vikings.
No,
you
it's
mean
like-
sweet like metal.
Sweet, yeah.
Like
It's hardcore.
yeah, like a dragon with a babe riding on it, kind of sweet. Yeah, okay, great. So like, so about Ragnarok, it's stuff fire falling from the sky, and what else?
And the Vikings, they're a proud people, and they want to go out in a rage of glory.
Yeah,
A blood rage of glory.
because you're going to Valhalla. Is that where you go?
Yes.
Yeah, you know it. So yeah. So and they have the gods, which if you've been following the Avengers, it's it's Thor and it's Odin and it's Loki. It's those guys.
Yeah, them guys.
And so the gods are there to help them, to give them gifts so that they can go out in an amazing, glorious rage of death. So that way when they die and go to Valhalla, they have the most glory. And so that's the big point of the game.
Yeah,
is
man,
to
you're
have
gonna be the
most-
big man on campus in Valhalla.
Yeah. So the whole everything you're doing is working towards winning you glory points. There's just around this giant square board is just like a counter that goes up to 100, but if you play it right, you'll wind up looping around the board at least once. Or in Zan's girlfriend's case, like she made it twice around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think she
Oh
did.
man,
She's real good, guys.
Some of the upgrades, they like stack on each other and work together. And
We're
how
getting
they
ahead
go.
of ourselves.
We are.
So basically, what's the basic way to play?
It's similar in many ways to Game of Thrones.
Okay.
In that you are dropping army individuals onto a map, and you have, based on various stats that can be raised or lowered, that will affect how many moves your character has per turn, how many glory points you win if you win a battle,
Yeah.
and how many characters you can have on the board
So
at the
its
same time.
baseline is turn-based strategy.
A little bit, but it's made more complicated by before that round even starts, and there are only 3 rounds, there's a drafting phase. And that is arguably the coolest part, because everybody starts with 8 cards, you take 1 and you pass to the left, and then you get a new set of cards. And so you're trying to build the best hand going into that round, but you don't necessarily know what cards are like going around or going to be coming to you.
Oh.
So in some situations, like I've managed to get cards that stack really nicely, but there's no guarantee that you'll get that. And there are other cards that are like monster cards that will give you great boosts, or like they're stronger as far as battle goes. Like like a fire troll, or
Yeah. The fire giant.
fire giant that's like 3 as far as damage goes, which is more than a basic warrior of
So are you
1.
assembling a team with your draft, or are you assembling like just like things that your troops will be good at?
You're
What-
assembling the possibility of upgrading your clan, your warriors, your ships, and also getting quests, which if you succeed in them, which would be like have the most strength in a blue area, or have the most characters in Valhalla at the end of the round, or have 4 characters or more in a certain thing.
Sort of like those Star Wars objective cards for the rebels, where it's like it says some requirement that you need to meet by the end of the round. And if you meet that, then you're going to get some of the victory points, the glory points.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, so like you use all these things to like get the glory points. About how long does this one last compared to like the other games?
I'd say on average it's about 2 hours, maybe a little less.
Okay, so it's not as intensive as some of the other ones, but you're still like in for the journey, which most
Yeah.
of these board games are going to be like that. Like
Right.
if you're getting started new, like the really good ones are not like 1 hour.
Right.
And you're done.
The shortest game that we've recommended is 5-minute dungeon, not 5-hour dungeon. 5-minute dungeon.
5-hour dungeon sounds also amazing.
That would be a hellish slog of a game.
It's not much shorter than a 5-minute game, though.
Right.
So yeah, that's about as short as you're going to find anywhere.
So, and then what are some other like key differences, which like in strategy techniques from this game to other turn-based strategy?
Well, this, I mean, at its core, this would be considered, like Michael was describing, a area control unit deployment thing.
Yeah.
But the board is much smaller, whereas Game of Thrones' entire country of Westeros,
Right.
or Risk, it's the entire world. There's only 9 different provinces, 9
So
different
you're like right up
areas.
on top of each other.
You're on top of one another, and also if we three were playing and I dropped a character into a province, you could drop 2 characters into a province or move characters into a province, and that would not mean that we immediately engage in battle.
Oh, no?
It's only in the case that you or I chose to pillage that area for resources, which would allow us to upgrade our clan stats, that then we would enter into battle. And we'd then go around the table and say, does anybody else want to enter this province to the various areas to also join in the battle? In the case that if I were trying to pillage and you were facing off against me, if I lost the battle, that wouldn't mean that you inherently pillage. That just means I wouldn't pillage, and all my characters would be sent to Valhalla.
So what about this game? Because you guys mentioned this is one of your new favorites. Like, what about this one is just so fun and so different?
It's because there's so many different approaches to how you want to win it, and each time you play, you can play it different.
Right.
Eric Lang, the creator of this game that designed it, he said, this isn't like reinventing the wheel. There's a lot of games like this. He said that it's blood relative, it's distant relative would be Risk. But he said the thing about a lot of these other area control games was that some players would be prone to holding back and letting other people fight it out. And then they sort of come in after the dust is settled. And he said he didn't want any of that. And he wanted people to play the game, to actually like get into combat.
Make it more chaotic right off the bat.
Mm-hmm.
Even if they didn't think they could win. So there are some cards where it enables you to want to lose in a battle.
Right. And those cards are real crafty.
What?
Yeah. It'll be like, just like Game of Thrones, there are the like +1, +4, plus whatever. There are some cards that can be played after cards have been played of like a +2 or a +3. So you'll put down that, they'll put down something, and then you'll be like, haha, but actually I just won. Or it'll be a +0, but it says, if you lose, you steal the rage of one character. And rage is the like currency of how many moves you have in a round. So,
gotcha. Because like a vengeful Viking gets more shit done.
Yeah. So you could effectively lose a bunch of battles, and then up your rage counter. So at the very end, everybody's exhausted their rage, and that allows you to just like pillage the land like crazy. It's also worth noting when you do enter battles, whoever wins the battle loses that card. If you lose the battle, that card goes back into your hand. So that +0 steal rage card is like a fucking troll of a card because it allows you to like steal a lot of rage. It's
so Zan, where would you put this one if you're sorting it?
If I was sorting it, it's very death and glory and everything, and it does feel extremely egocentric.
I want to go Gryffindor.
So I would go Gryffindor.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't have the thought and diplomacy that I feel like a Slytherin game would have.
Yeah. It doesn't have nearly as much deception. You really do have to just play hard.
Yeah.
Also, you mentioned the word diplomacy. If any of you have ever played the game Diplomacy, which is like a super heightened version of Risk, my God, what a game. That's a Slytherin 100%.
Oh my gosh. I feel like you guys could just keep sorting games all night. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to cut you off.
We could.
But I want to know, Zan, if somebody were to like want to holler at you for like, hey, let me come to your next board game night because you seem like the most fun person to play with. You both seem like
He's an
quite
exceptional
the team.
host.
But if they wanted to also just shout at you and be like, hey, what are some more recs, or just like connect you, where would they find you on social media?
You can find me at Zan Alda on the Twitter, and if you just come find me on Twitter. Or just come over to my house and play
Zan
some
with
games.
a Z, correct?
Oh yeah, ZANALDA.
And Michael Barryte, you are all, of course, as always, at Belated Media.
This is true.
On all the social media, also on YouTube. I'm at that Katie Reed. You can like holler at my dumb ass about stats and cards all you want. I probably won't understand, but I do want to play that Dead of Winter, so
it's super
let's
fun.
hook it up. Please rate us on iTunes or Google Play, wherever you found us. we've gotten like some really nice fan mail that Michael was nice enough to show me.
Yes, that's right. You can write to us with any sort of love or corrections at
I would love 8 mail.
SortingHatPodcast@gmail.com.
The chess club's coming for us.
Oh my
yeah.
god!
That was so much
Board
trouble.
Game Geeks, because like honestly, they're so influential.
But like, send us recommendations because like we're always looking for games, guys.
Yeah.
And check out Game House. If you live in the LA area, Game House. It's a fantastic little game cafe up in Glendale. Google it.
It's really
House is
great. Yeah, like especially if you want to try out a board game, apparently you just pay a flat fee and like you can just play games in there as long as you want, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. House is spelled Haus, like the German thing. Game House. Google it.
Yeah. So we should go play a game. It's pretty late now. We'll probably get done by like 5 a.m., right, gentlemen?
Absolutely.
That sounds about right.
Thanks so much for having me, guys.
Bye.